Urban anthropology is the study of cultural systems and identities in cities, as well as the various political, social, economic, and cultural forces that shape urban forms and processes. Although anthropologists have studied the city since 1930s, the label urban anthropology became common only in the early 1960s. Interest in urban issues was originally an extension of the anthropological interest in peasants and rural areas. Using research methods developed for and through studies of small tribes and other societies, anthropologists studied spatially bounded communities such as ghettos, ethnic neighborhoods, and urban villages. Social problems, especially poverty, were the focus on most urban anthropological research. In the 1960s and early 70s, Oscar Lewis's controversial Culture of Poverty thesis generated intense debates on the meaning of culture, the need for historical contextualization, and the structural factors that produce urban inequalities. Anthropologists also debated the meanings of city and urban, which were initially informed by Western biased knowledge. To avoid this ethnocentrism, urban anthropologists used ethnographic methods, historical analysis, and cross-cultural comparisons to explore the social mechanisms and cultural institutions that differentiate cities from primitive societies and peasant communities, as well as Western from non-Western cities. Unlike earlier views, which depicted the city as the site of fragmentation, alienation, and impersonal relationships, urban ethnography has been powerful in showing the strong friendships, kinship relations, and ethnic solidarities that may structure interactions in urban centers. Urban anthropology is a section of general anthropology and urban studies. It embraces urban ethnography and is diversified by regional differences. In short, the subject is quite complex, as it examines various sources of influence and stimuli. The formational phase of urban anthropology took place in the 1960s, a reflection of the contemporary rapid world urbanization, especially in Latin America and Asia, that occurred after the Second World War. Europe and the United States had already reached high levels of urbanization by the time. Urban anthropology investigates cities and the sociocultural experiences and practices of urban dwellers in relation to the larger socioeconomic and cultural context. While scholars have focused on an urban milieu throughout the world, theoretical and methodological approaches to the study of urbanity have been carved out of specific locales and historical junctures. Detailed ethnography and participatory research in the United States and broader Americas seeks to capture daily life in a community broadly defined. Also, anthropology and the sister discipline of sociology trade studies of the city to the work of Numa Denis Fustel de Coulanges' 1864 work, The Ancient City and the 19th Century Sociology. Sustained scholarship in this area of specialization by anthropologists didn't develop in earnest until the 1940s. The earlier studies were not necessarily recognized in the discipline, because they were dubbed sociological works that were marginal to anthropological theories and methods, focusing on holistic approaches to culture. Exploring the development and role of the city in relation to the hinterland or within a larger sociocultural context, anthropologists in the 1940s have focused on the development of adaptive mechanisms of individuals and collectives. This prompted studies of cultural displacement and anomy, social stratification, racial and ethnic tensions, and adaptive behaviors and cultural patterns among the urban poor in particular. Although anthropologists drew on sociology's long engagement with complex societies, they built upon the methodological strengths of anthropology to study folk in an urban context. Both the methodological techniques used to study so-called primitive societies and tribal bands could not be really transferred. The study of the city, its complex social institutions, and the diversity of lifeways challenge holistic approaches to culture and cross-cultural generalizations. A focus on structures and patterns of social inequality yielded a critical analysis of migration, labor, class, race, ethnicity, poverty, and violence. Social and spatial organization and placement and displacements were also informed by processes of industrialization, deindustrialization, and neoliberalism in a local urban sphere that was linked to a broader transnational and global political economy. In sum, scholars of urban anthropology in the United States waged critiques regarding the synchronic and bounded approaches to social life in the city. The relationship among the structure of the city, the cultural apparatus of society, and the transformation of urban settlements was then tied to a political economy ensconced in national and global networks of power, resulting in a range of cityscapes and imaginaries that encompass the industrial, decaying, neoliberal, environmental, and militarized city. Urban anthropology has received a good reception in Mexican territories, especially in Mexico City. That various books have been published in Mexico City and refer to the development of urban anthropology in that country is no coincidence. Besides being the most populated city in Latin America, it should be remembered that two of the foundational texts of urban anthropology, and which still maintain a word in theoretical debates, like How the Outcast Survive by Larissa Lomnitz from 1975 and Anthropology of Poverty, Five Families by Oscar Luis from 1961, they were written in Mexico City. In addition, Mexico is one of the Latin American countries where this branch of anthropology has developed the most, having even generated academic and institutional spaces, such as the study program in urban cultures of the Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana or UAM, exceeding in much to the development of urban anthropology in our country. In the Anthropology in Mexico and the Urban Question, Garcia Canclini states that the challenge of urban anthropology is to transcend both the application of traditional anthropological methods to the city and rescue of the exotic in the city, to achieve an approach to the city that allows understanding urban communities, such as popular neighborhoods, punk groups, or television audiences, within the complex economic and political fabric and semantics of the globalized metropolis. In part of the book, it says anthropology now offers, through prolonged and dense ethnographies, original qualitative contributions on interethnic and intercultural relations in cities, which other disciplines subordinate to macro-social visions, and at the same time, we must question by that the approach strategies of anthropologists inhibited for a long time the construction of an urban anthropology, that is, a joint vision of the meaning of the life in the city. Ana Maria Portal and Patricia Safa Barraza dedicate their article From Urban Fragmentation to the Study of Diversity in Large Cities to analyze the way in which anthropologists have handled the relationship between the scale of the neighborhood, traditionally the anchor point of anthropological studies. As they point out, the city is not the sum of its neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods serve to organize the social actors that inhabit it. The city being analyzed as a social arena in which the interests and conflicts of social actors are resolved. Thus, neighborhood identities cease to be seen as static and timeless, to be assumed as weapons from which to negotiate meanings. Finally, neighborhoods are the places from which we build the metropolitan experience on a daily basis. And there are many other books or articles discussing about topics which are proper from the urban anthropology. So, with those examples in mind, we can tell urban anthropology is a subfield of the branch of social anthropology, which continues to be developed on a daily basis, and is probably one of the subfields that it's going to have a major relevance in the next years. Anthropology has studied cities, or fragments of them, since the 1950s, although it will not be until the 1970s and the 1990s that urban anthropology is configured as a specific area. We can recall the work of urban studies in Central Africa coordinated from the Manchester School under the leadership of Max Gluckman. or classics such as Oscar Luis's ethnography on peasant migrants to Mexico City from 1986. If I can keep working on social anthropology and have the opportunity to do some research related to urban anthropology, I would be going to the biggest cities such as Tokyo, Delhi, Shanghai, Sao Paulo, or Mexico City, and specifically going to penitentiaries, drug rehab centers, the main clandestine music clubs or sex shop of the biggest cities as a way to expose and talk about the realities of the cities most people ignore, being this a good or a bad thing. I hope with doing so, I can give to readers a wider perspective about the life in the cities and the other side of those, hoping it would please the audience and tease their interest into knowing more and asking themselves what they can do to keep growing as a society to improve better lifestyles within their communities or their families. Also, I'd like to be studying social phenomena such as perception of homosexuality in the cities, the levels of anger of its inhabitants, the way they perceive the dead or the mourning rituals, and also other issues regarding suicide on the urban spaces. I think urban anthropology and social anthropology in general still have much to offer to the general public, and I hope in the next years we can appreciate some literary or audiovisual works within social anthropology and its subfields. And if they can change a little our actual perceptions or perspectives and make us ask ourselves what can we do to work to become a better society, I guess it would be totally worth it.